But thank you all for coming tonight. The question I usually get is, how did you get interested in the Ku Klux Klan? My children especially ask me that. But there's two reasons. First of all was that my grandfather, he grew up in the Winona area, little town of Stockton, and he remembered seeing crosses burned on the hills, on the bluffs above Stockton. Got it?
Keep talking.
Okay, keep talking. Okay. So I kind of knew that the Klan was in Minnesota at one point, but when I was working at the Owatonna Public Library, the library director called me on the phone and at the children's desk and said, "There's a lady up here. She wants to know why Owatonna was such a hotbed of Klan activity." And I told her he said he didn't know, but that he would put me on to do some research on it. So as he hung up, though, he said, "But you're not going to find anything because it's a secret organization and you won't find a thing." Well, the challenge was thrown down and I took it. So tonight you get to see some of the things that I have found. First of all, when I got that reference question, I went to the Steele County Historical Society. It seemed to make sense. And I saw that they had a folder, the Ku Klux Klan. And I thought, oh, this is so easy. I opened it up. Hang on. Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. And that was what was inside the folder. Members of the Ku Klux Klan of the Ellendale vicinity held a meeting Monday evening in the old Baptist church building, which they recently rented. Now, not a lot to go on, but there was a date. And that's what I needed, was a date so that we could start looking from there. Okay, so we need to know a little bit about the Ku Klux Klan. The name is based on the Greek words Ku Klux for circle, and originally it was founded by some people who had a Scottish background. So they took the word clan, but they put all of them in K's. And then that is one of the symbols, the the cross with the iron cross with the drop of blood in the center. Okay, that scares me. Okay, there were three major time periods of Klan activity after the Civil War, and that was when the Klan was first founded, and that was mainly in the South. This was a reaction to the changes after the Civil War. They were trying to keep the formerly enslaved people in their down social position. So they came up with this idea of a group that would harass um, Black people and then also frighten them so that they would not make um, try to be equals in any way to others. The period that we're going to be talking about is the 1920s. So we'll come back to that. And then the third time period is a little hard because um, the Klan was very active in trying to keep segregation active. So that again was more in the South, but it really was somewhat throughout the country. And it's hard to say when that ended because for the most part, there's still hate groups, other things. The Klan itself, there still is an organization, but it's evolved into other things too. Okay, so we need to know some words. A conclave is a gathering of the KKK. Clavern was the meeting place. The Kliegel was the recruiter. Convocations were their meetings. Clavaliers were part of the marching group, and you would sometimes see on automobiles or in store windows the letters KIGY for Klansman, I greet you. That would be kind of the secret symbol that they'd know this is the place you should shop if you're a Klan member. Okay, so what was happening in the 1920s? It was a period after World War I, and World War I had been a time where the U.S. was a lot of people in the U.S. did not want to be involved in the First World War because they felt like they were sending their sons to fight other people's wars, not their own. And so they wanted to have, they actually had an America First committee where they fought against having involvement in the World War One era. There was especially some bad feelings against immigrants at that time and against Germans. My grandfather also talked about up until that point, he had been born in the United States, but he had grown up speaking German at home. But when he was during World War One, he was told that he should stop speaking German in public. And so he did. He still spoke it at home. But he said that he had a neighbor who was more stubborn than smart. And he kept speaking German in public and ended up with his nice red barn splashed with yellow paint being the color for a coward, for a traitor. So there was still some of that negativity towards immigrants and some Germans and other Europeans, specifically Eastern Europeans. After a war, there's often a little bit of an economic depression. This was not the depression, but it was enough to the war had brought something's vibrating here. Yes, okay. Thank you. So there was no longer the output for thank you, for the things that were necessary for war, so that there was a little bit of a drop in the economy. There was also urban growth. 1920 census was the first year that more people lived in urban areas than in rural areas. So society was changing. It was becoming more cosmopolitan. I don't know if that's quite the word for it, but there were also influx of Black people into urban areas and immigrants throughout the state. So they were, society was definitely changing. Then along comes a movie. How many of you have heard of this movie? Okay, yeah. It's based on the book The Klansman by Thomas Dixon, and it tells the story of two families, one in the North, one in the South, and how they go to fight in the Civil War. And then after the Civil War, there are problems with the family in the South because they are having now to deal with this new society. The formerly enslaved people are threatening their women, they felt, and so they had to come. Who comes to the rescue? The Ku Klux Klan. So in Atlanta, Georgia, there was a group of people led by Joseph Simmons who decided that that was a good time to bring back the Klan. But this Klan wasn't going to be as negative or as violent as the Klan or as regional as the first Klan was. Instead, it was going to be one that was for the whole country to be involved in, and that was their plan. So along comes a group that says they believe in the God and the Christian religion, believe in the separation of church and state, hold no allegiance to any foreign government, emperor, king, or pope. The pope gives you a little bit of a question mark. Believe in law and order, believe in liberty, hold allegiance to the United States, believe in upholding the Constitution, believe in freedom of speech, believe in protecting the purity of women, believe that public schools are a cornerstone of good government, believe in a free press uncontrolled by political parties or religious sects, believe in the prevention of unwarranted strikes by foreign labor agitators, believe in the limitation of foreign immigration, and believe your rights in this country are superior to those of foreigners. So those were the tenets of the Klan. So they put a lot of effort into recruiting members throughout the United States. Here in Minnesota, the one person he seemed to have been everywhere. His name was Twilight Orn. He visited cities all throughout southern Minnesota. I found them in tiny towns like Blooming Prairie, Mabel, Rushford. I found him in Northfield, Owatonna, the Twin Cities. He was an editor for the Call of the North newspaper. So he would go around and give speeches and make it. He was very persuasive speaker. It was said that he would say, "We're not anti anything. We're pro-American. We're 100% American." So he was very effective. They would also put out announcements in newspapers. Sometimes it'd be as simple as Klan meeting, same time, Thursday night, same place. So you'd have to know a little bit of where to head, but they would also deliver flyers to homes during the night, telling about some of the tenets of the Klan. And then they would offer subscriptions to Klan publications. I was doing some research on the Owatonna Public Library, and a man from the Klan came to a board meeting and offered subscription for free to a Klan magazine. And I'm thinking, no, don't take it, don't take it. But they took it and had it for several years. And they did that around the area. They also had weekly publications, the Call of the North, which became the Minnesota Fiery Cross. Okay, this was a headline from the Call of the North. Barnesville mayor tries to stop Klan meeting retreats. The Gopher State Ku Klux Klan are now coming full speed ahead, and it's in the tiniest section, but says that they were going to get 100,000 members. Well, we don't think they ever did. Okay, so some of the other forms of recruitment that they did, they would mail invitations to patriotic societies, such as veterans groups, fraternal orders, some of the social groups that were in different towns. They also used social and economic pressure. They would say to a businessman, you know, you could get a lot more business if you were a Klan member, and because we will come to your place of business instead of go to other places. They would also go to churches and social groups to donate money. Now, this one I'm going to have a little trouble reading from this direction, but let me just tell you the basic story about it. This was the Concord, the old Concord Baptist Church, which is by West Concord, over by Dodge Center, that direction. And as they were holding an evening service, 12 unmasked Klansmen walked down the aisle singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers." When they got to the front, they asked the minister if they could say a prayer. So they gathered in a circle and had one of the people in the Klan group say a prayer. And then they asked also if they could address the group. And the Reverend Mr. Meeks was the one who they gave a purse of money to. Usually the amount of money was between $25 and $50, somewhere along there. We don't have the amount written down in this newspaper article. But they praised Reverend Mr. Meeks for his his 100% American stand, and his being a patriotic person who was helping the country. And then the Reverend Mr. Meeks gets up and praises the Klan. And this was not a one-off. This happened in many of the Protestant churches in different towns. So you can kind of guess these things. The Klan consisted of whites, Protestants, pro-American people, often who were World War I veterans. So they would go to American Legion, Veterans of Foreign War, to try to get some of those people involved. Mainly working class. There weren't a lot of doctors and lawyers involved, a few, and then there were those who wanted to defend their own traditional American way of life. So women had their own groups. This is one of the things that we did find in Owatonna. It's the Golden Seal Klan. It was the women's KKK. Worst call letters for a radio station ever. Not but this was this had been saved over the years, and when a woman found that we were talking about the Klan again. She'd had it in her barn for years. Her sons told her, "Mom, would you please let us burn it? Let it," because there are other things in there too, other robes. And she said no, she wouldn't let them. And then now it's been donated to the Historical Society. So, okay, so the women and children had their own groups. One of the churches in Owatonna had the Come Clean Club for their youth. And yes, they all started with K's. Okay. The Klan was against Jews, Native Americans, foreigners, Blacks and other people of color, and Catholics. Now, around here, what did we have the most of? Catholics. So that's where a lot of their attacks were against Catholics. In fact, this is a coin, and I really, I've become more sensitive. I apologize ahead of time for reading this to you. Okay. This side of the coin is good. Non Soblis Sedenthor, which means not for self, but for others. You can see the horse has KKK on its flanks. This is from 1922. It was given to an attorney in Owatonna who had done some legal work for the Klan, and they must have thought he needed this. But on the back of the coin, it says, "I would rather be a Klansman in a robe of snowy white than a Catholic priest in a robe as black as night. For a Klansman is an American, and America is his home, but the priest owes his allegiance to a Dago Pope in Rome." Ouch. Yeah, not good. Okay. But I do want to emphasize that this was throughout the state of Minnesota. Activity is reported as early as 1921 in Duluth. Who can tell me what happened in Duluth 1920? That's the lynching of 3 Black men. And my co-author, Elizabeth, was able to see the diocese in Duluth had gotten records of the Klan, the membership list. And over half of the people who were in the Klan had also been involved in the lynching the year before, because they had lists of those people too. North Star Klan number 2 was organized in Minneapolis, number 1, and that was in 1921. Number 1 was St. Paul. Then in South Central Minnesota, here the first Klan parade in Minnesota was held in August of 1923. Others that happened in that area were Austin had a public naturalization ceremony the following month, September 1923, had 400 new members at that. Red Wing had several cross burnings on the bluffs, including on Barn Bluff, right along the river. The first state Klan convention was held in Faribault in August of 1924. Over 68 towns and cities were represented. The big highlight at that, it was held at the Rice County Fairgrounds. And one of the big highlights, though, was a biplane flew over, and on the belly of the plane was painted KKK. So you know for sure who they were supporting. I grew up in Winona. There were crosses burned near Sugarloaf and on Garvin Heights. Okay, southwestern Minnesota, Fairmont had a gathering, but they were overachievers in Fairmont, if you know anybody from there. Instead of having a cross soaked with rags on it soaked in oil and then lighting that, they had a cross that was supplied with Delco light batteries, electric. Mayor of St. James was the Grand Dragon in 1930, Minnesota, North and South Dakota. In the Iron Range, the School Board of Virginia, Minnesota all claimed to be members of the Klan. Hibbing, they left Klan newspapers at homes, and Brainerd, they burned crosses on the grounds of all the public schools. Now, this brings up a question because people often ask, why did they burn crosses, okay? And there could be 2 reasons. One was to honor places, okay? If they had one of their meetings, they would have a burning cross to show that they were Christian, okay? That they were looking to the lighted cross. But the second use of it was intimidation. In this point, for the public schools, it would have been more like a positive thing. if they burned it by Catholic churches or by Catholic schools, then it was more intimidation. A friend of mine who is 100 years old remembers seeing a cross burned at her Catholic school right outside of it. There we go. Okay, then we get to some of the research, and I appreciate Alexis pulling some extra things for me. I had a few. But the first instance that we have of what happened in Northfield, actually a little bit earlier than this. It was in May of 1923. Okay, excuse me. Yeah, and in this one it was from the Carltonian in April of 1924. And they said that there was a meeting of the Ku Klux Klan in the woods a short distance from Waterford last night. Where is Waterford? Does anyone know? North or south? North of. Okay. Okay.
And there's a town and the township.
Okay. Okay. And this one just says it's a short distance from Waterford. A number of Carleton men who were interested in the Klan attended the meeting, which was conducted by someone from the Twin Cities area. A huge fiery cross was burning, attracting a large crowd from Northfield and surrounding territory. Several members of the Northfield chapter sat in as honorary guests at the meeting. And let's see, plans are being formulated whereby associate memberships for students can be obtained at a reduced fee. A number of men have signified their intention to join, and the Klan Kleagle requests all persons who so desire to drop a card, and then they have the post office box to send it to in Northfield. So the Carleton students were interested. Then we have this one in June of 1924. 1,000 persons crowd City Park to hear speaker advertised as a Ku Klux Klan orator. It was advertised by Dodgers profusely distributed all over the city, and fully 1,000 persons were on hand when the speaker appeared in an automobile. It says this took place in the city park, so which park that would be for sure. The Klansman, who said he was a minister of the gospel and lived in Minneapolis, spoke for an hour on the principles of the Klan, based on the cardinal tenet of the organization, native white Protestant supremacy. He denied that the organization is anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, or anti-Negro, and asserts that it neither favors nor takes part in night riding or law violation. The crowd listened attentively to what the speaker had to say, and when he finished his talk, a dozen or more men answered the invitation to remain after the meeting. There was no evidence of Klan regalia anywhere. So, then the following year, there was a parade in town, August 1925. Said that it brought thousands to town, and that they had, I believe it was 500 people, 500 Kluxers involved in it. And this is the homecoming Labor Day program that they had in September of 1926. The speaker for the afternoon, Mrs. Mabel Crowley from Duluth. And it's interesting because we tried to track these people down, and they really often used different names. And I forgot to tell you, Twilight Orn is actually Peter Sledderdahl from Hutchinson, Minnesota. So Sledderdahl, yeah. Yep. Then they had a full program of sports, a speaker for the evening about the Mexican situation as it is today. Full program of sports, and then large parade at 7 o'clock and fireworks. Admission was 25 cents, everybody welcome. In 1923, I mentioned already, there was in Austin, they had a naturalization ceremony where they had 400 people become members of the Klan. The speaker that night stated that the goal of the Klan was to form chapters in each of Minnesota's 87 counties. The next picture shows how far they got. All of the red are ones, and I've actually added to this over the last couple of months as I found more. That's one of my goals, is to find out how far they got, how many actual counties had Klan activity in. At this point, in my research, there are 57 counties that did have Klan activity. Okay, so we're going to talk about the conclaves. And now I'm going to shift a little bit to what happened in Owatonna, because you'll see why. The features of the Klan conclaves, there were American flags all over the place. There were drill teams, color guards, speeches, sports, bands. One of the sports contests would be like kitten ball. The first conclave in Owatonna had the fat man's race. In order to run, you had to weigh over 250 pounds. They also had patriotic and religious songs that they would have in their programs. This is why I talk a lot about Owatonna, because up at the State Historical Society, there is a photo album of this conclave that was held. Does anybody guess what location this is in Owatonna? Yeah, the Steele County Free Fairgrounds, yes, our highlight in town. And this is 100 years since this happened, and I think we need to have reconciliation of some sort in our town for what happened, because it was one of the largest conclaves that was held. You'll note that no one has their face covered. There was a state law by this point that you could not cover your face, thanks to Myrtle Cain, who was a state legislator. 1925, at the fairgrounds, the permission had been given by the county commissioners for them to use the fairgrounds, and then the fair board approved. There was a parade from the fairgrounds to Central Park downtown and back. Within the last few months, I met a person whose husband was born the night of that parade, and they were a Catholic family, and the mother had just had the baby and was back in her room and looked out the window to see the Klan members walking down the street. They were a Catholic family, so there was an even more of a dread to that scene that she had. Then they had a supper at the Armory downtown, served by the Trinity Lutheran Ladies' Aid, and then picnic suppers were also held at the fairgrounds. That evening, there were 3 weddings that were held there, and they had a backdrop of a flaming cross. Worst family photos ever. You with me? Yeah. But they also had a fireworks display and some flaming crosses burning. So these are some of the floats that were in that parade. This one is from St. Paul. I hope you can see it. It says it's a little red schoolhouse, and we'll talk about that, why that was such an important thing. What's the opposite of a public school in most cases? It's mainly Catholic schools. I mean, so they felt that everyone should go to public schools. In this one, you can see in the front seat, there's a young person. They have their own hood on. In the back seat, there's an even younger person without a hood. So it really was a family groups. The Klan later stated that they had 10,000 people who attended this first conclave in Owatonna. So what do you think? No, I think they inflated it a little bit. I've looked at they paid so much per person to the county fair to use the fairgrounds. And based on those numbers, it would have been more like 2,400 people, 2,500 people who attended, but definitely not 10,000. And this is the float that to me is the most disturbing. On the side, it says, "We believe in the tenets of Christian religion." And there are 4 men holding swords surrounding a woman who's leaning against a cross. They're protecting the purity of the woman. And as they're going down the street, they sang, Rock of Ages. And although there was a law that people couldn't cover their faces, the horses could. Okay, talking a little bit more about the Americanism in the schools. One of the floats claimed that all of the members of the school board in Virginia, Minnesota were Klansmen, and that they had made Bible reading compulsory in the public schools. Later, there was a lawsuit brought suing the school board, saying that it was illegal for them to have the Bible be read in public schools, and that was settled in the favor of the person who objected. So about 3 weeks after that first conclave, there was at the Steele County School Board, the Owatonna School Board meeting, a group of ministers, Protestant ministers, came and had petitions asking that the Bible be required to be read in public schools. The school board didn't take any action, but then a few months later, January of the next year, the group returned and they had more signatures and were putting more pressure on the school board to do that. But the school board kind of backed down a little bit. They said they wouldn't make it compulsory, but if any teacher chose to read the Bible in their classes, they wouldn't be reprimanded. And the same thing, about 3 weeks after that first conclave in Owatonna, this was in the newspaper. Klan hanging attracts crowd. Phone is fixed. Quite a furor was created in North Deerfield one night last week when some local residents were trying to fix their telephone line at night with a lantern. Other residents saw a man hanging on a telephone pole and some men standing by with a lantern. Out went the call for help because Klansmen were hanging a man to a telephone pole. By the time the crowd arrived, the repairs were completed and the lineman and his helpers had gone home. The aroused populace returned home. Now it's kind of cute. They wrote it up kind of cute. It's those stupid, silly people thinking. But to me, it says that there was fear. There was fear that there was something that was really going to happen, that they were going to have lynchings in their little rural township, Steele County. The Klan was formally organized in 1926 at the Owatonna Fire Hall. 800 people were in attendance, and let me just say that would be like if we had 300 people in this room, because that room is not big enough to handle 800. But units from Waseca, Kenyon, Dodge Center, and Rochester were chartered that night also. And one other thing that makes Owatonna's experience different is that they actually purchased land in Owatonna. And it's just to the east of the downtown area. It was referred to as Klan Park, and a cavern was built down by the creek. So what the people often ask, well, what's that land now? It was purchased after World War II by a Catholic family, and then they donated most of it to the city of Owatonna, and it's now a soccer practice field. So we have children of different nationalities, different ethnic groups using that Klan land. Okay. Part of I have to compete with the train. Part of what did make Owatonna a hotbed of Klan activity was because there were 3 conclaves held there, statewide ones. The second one was 1926. This one was open to the public. Ellendale Band played vocal and instrumental music, and then they had addresses on Klan principles and the condition of the Klan in Minnesota and in the United States. One of the things that makes this second one interesting is that they were at the Klan Park, and then they decided to again walk down to the downtown area and back. And for those of you who are young, there used to, before cell phones, they used to have call boxes for fire. So you'd go and you'd have to pull something down and it would send a signal to the fire department and they would come out. Well, along the route, someone pulled that down. And so the fire trucks come rushing out that area and there was no fire. So let's just join at the back of the parade. They brought up the rear. Okay. And I usually put, here we go. This was then the third state conclave, 1927. And this one was held at the Klan Park, something doing all the time, something for everyone. One admission for all day and night. They had speakers, sports again, and then the grand parade. But just as they were starting to get ready for the parade, there was a torrential downpour, and they did not have the parade. And that is the last public meeting that we know of for the Klan in actually 1927. Yeah. Okay, now just so you know, the groups did not like the Klan being in the area. Okay. One of the things that Alexis had given me, and I wasn't able to print it off, was written, and I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, but it is a book that's it's an article that's available here at Northfield Library that tells about a woman's. She's told the story of Northfield's history, and she mentions the Klan and mentions how she and her mother especially did not like the Klan being here, and how they went to some of the. Do you have that right there? Okay, I'll keep talking. Okay. So there were groups, there were people, individuals who were not happy with what was going on. One of them was the Midway News, which was a weekly newspaper in St. Paul, and they would highlight people who they found out were members of the Klan and then expose them. If they could get lists of membership people who were members specifically more in the Twin Cities area than rural areas, they would print those lists so people would know who really was involved. Churches sometimes hosted speakers who would defend the Jews, Catholics, and Black people. Then we talked about the anti-masking law had already been passed. And the Anti-Defamation League defended the Jewish communities. And this was something I had not realized, that there was an NAACP group. There were groups in Minnesota, the Twin Cities areas, but then also Rochester, and they did what they could to defend the Black communities too. Did you find it? Okay.
I know it's a little small.
Thank you. It is by Brynhild Roberg, Northfield History and More, and she has a couple pages that talk about. Okay, here we go. Yes. Among the curious spectators were my parents and I, aged not quite 8. My father was then editor of the Northfield Independent. He wrote an article about the event, but the library does not have the paper's files for that year. I remember the white hoods, the torches, the excitement in the crowd, and my parents' strong disapproval of those who participated in the march. The article goes on to say that local Klansmen robed and mounted, but not masked, led the parade, which included several hundred Klanswomen and Klansmen in full regalia. Several floats symbolized the school and the church. And I like this part too. In the same issue of the paper, the news carried a small item. A Wall Street farmer, after making oh, that's not the one. Hang on, that's just where is it? Right here. Okay. In a 1994 interview with the Dundas farmer, Ben Sparts, Mr. Sparts spoke of the Klan. They said they claimed they stood for the American values, striking out against bootleggers, adulterers, minorities, and most viciously Catholics. When they threatened a local farmer because of his Mexican staple hand, the farmer sent out a large bull, sending the sheeted persecutors in all directions so quickly that they left their cars behind, leading to easy identification. The stable hand, whom they had come to harass, took the bull back in, handling it like a little kid. Thank you. Yeah, so there were people who fought back. The National Vigilance Association was a specific group formed to fight the Klan, and it didn't go much beyond the 1920s. Okay, but then the Knights of Columbus, of course, they had a lot to lose with. They were the men's group for the Catholic communities. In Owatonna, the Knights of Columbus discovered that during the winter time, the Klan would meet in this school building. It was a private school. It was Canfield School of Business. And they found out what night they'd met, and so they they lined their cars up around the corner of this where this building is located, with the facing the building. When the meeting was finished and the people came out of the building, the Knights flashed their headlights on so they could see who the people were. I haven't been able to verify it, but a man who's now passed on said that there were some fisticuffs that night between the two groups. The Klan did begin to decline in the mid to late 1920s. And a lot of the issue of that was because of the scandal in Indiana. And if you haven't had a chance, I put a copy up here. I know Selco libraries have it. It's by Timothy Gray, Fever in the Heartland. And the subtitle of the book is, I can't read it from here, but the basic part of it is that how the Klan tried to take over America and the woman who stopped them. So give a shout out to Marge Oberholzer, because she was the one who really was able to expose the Klan leadership for the scoundrels, the hateful people they were. So in the past, I've tried to tell the whole story. I can't tell it anywhere near as well as that book does. If you're interested, get on the list for that, because it is amazing. All I can say, it exposed the Klan, as this cartoon shows, the graft and corruption that was there. And because of that, then all across, it was a phenomena. It was so publicized all across the nation, so that it really led to the decline of the Klan throughout the United States. Okay, so here in Minnesota, the Klan declined 1927 with that last conclave. The land in Owatonna was sold in 1945, but a lot of the Klan chapters stayed on the books until 1997, when Minnesota Secretary of State Joan Grow dissolved them. They hadn't been active, but they were still on the books. Okay. We've talked about Twilight Orn, about the night, and this was a book he actually ended up turning against the Klan. He wrote a book against them. He sued them because they hadn't paid him what he was expecting. But in his book, he writes this: "It is not a spiritual movement in any sense, but an organization who has entered the list of politics on a sinister basis. The Klan is religious fanaticism and racial prejudice, seeking political power for the benefit of a few arch manipulators." And before I read the last slide, I want to just tell you about, Faribault's not that far away. Faribault also had issues with the Klan. They were up at Shattuck. There were some issues there. But this is from the Albert Lee Evening Tribune. Faribault firemen last night performed the unusual task of extinguishing a fiery cross of the Ku Klux Klan in that city. The flaming emblem of the order was burning on East 2nd Street Bridge in that city, and residents of the vicinity called out the firefighters, who, anticipating a burning house, found a burning cross, which they threw in the river. A second cross was burned on the bluffs below St. Mary's Hall and was watched by hundreds of downtown pedestrians. The cross was constructed of wooden oil-soaked rope, which gave a brilliant illumination. So they, as I said, the Klan was trying to get into every town that they could, as many as they could. I want to conclude this part of the talk with an editorial from the Winona Republican Herald. And this is early, 1921. It is difficult, though, to see how the modern Klan can harmonize its openly professed principles with traditional American ideals, in spite of its claim to 100% Americanism. Its appeals show it as frankly anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, anti-Negro, and anti-immigrant. That means intolerance, and Americanism, as most Americans understand it, is based on religious and racial tolerance. So that, I hope, is a good background for you of what was happening here. I mean, I have some things I'd like to show you. I'm going to have to kind of go back and forth between the microphones so the people upstairs can hear.
Ryan, I'm gonna try turning the camera on your laptop so the folks upstairs can see. If that's okay with you.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
So
All
I
right,
should-
turning some things around for people.
Okay,
So hopefully, yeah, you can see. Looks like they can see up there. So
very
go
good.
right ahead.
Okay. All right, well, the microphone should be okay.
It should be good.
Okay, I'll talk now. It's interesting because over the years, I've been given things from people as I've gone to talks, and it's always the women who've collected the things. The men have, I don't have anything from the men's group, but I do have here the certifies that Mrs. Ruby McDonald has donated the sum of $5 to the women of the Ku Klux Klan of Olmsted County. And then the Women's Constitution, actually the Women's Ku Klux Creed. And then we also have the Constitution of the Women of the Ku Klux Klan. You're welcome to look at these when the program's over. I also have more photographs from that, the photo album that's up at the State Historical Society, showing some of the other quotes that were involved. I also, I was a good Lutheran girl. My family wasn't involved in the Klan. I thought. But my aunt was actually Methodist, not Lutheran. I'm sorry, that wasn't very nice. I'll throw her under the bus. She had given me a container of coins, and I was grateful. There were some like silver dollars in there, different things, and there was a coin that I didn't recognize, and so I just put it back in. I'm like, oh, whatever. Years later, as I'm starting to get to know what I'm looking for, I pulled the coin out. It was a Klan coin in my house. Now, there are some initials on here, SYMWAO, spend your money with Americans only. And then there's MIAFA, made in America for Americans. Those were what were on the coin. So you just never know. I like to think that it was my uncle had been given a coin by a friend. Who knows? I'll never know. But I've also told you about how my boss at the library said, you'll never find anything. Nothing. So when Elizabeth and I had an article published in the Minnesota History Magazine, I got more phone calls, different things from people, some really interesting stories. In my retirement, my goal is to finish the website that I started that is documenting every county in Minnesota and what happened in each of the counties. That's my goal. Hasn't gotten done yet. Only had 4 months. But people would contact me, and this one family said they'd like to come and visit me at the Blooming Prairie Library. That's what they brought me. They actually brought me two hoods. The other one is in Minneapolis right now, but they said for me to keep this one as long as I was going out doing programs to be able to share with people. The woman who owned it was Mary Edmonds. It was the aunt of the family who had it. And after she passed away, they were going through her things and found these two hoods in her possessions. So when I first got it, you could see the fold lines because it would have been worn pinned up inside. Okay. But I want to show, well, I'm not sure if I can do this. Before you leave, I will put up another picture on the screen that shows people outside of the Claremont First Presbyterian Church. First two rows are Klan members sitting, and the second, then behind them are are congregation members in regular clothing. That was the church that Mary Edmonds attended. And although we can't identify her, her family's pretty sure they know that's the church she went to for years and years. She moved around to towns like Casson and Dodge Center and Claremont and Blooming Prairie, but that was always her church. So there's a good possibility that Mary is in that photograph. I had asked the family members, if they'd ever had any idea that she was involved in the Klan, and they said no. I asked, was there any indication that maybe she had bad feelings towards other groups? And the woman said, well, when she was dating her husband, her aunt's first question was, is he Catholic? And he wasn't, so he was okay. And they got married and everything was fine. So it could be a social group. It could have been a social thing from her church that she got involved. But she kind of obviously followed some of the tenets of the Klan. And I will put that photograph up later. These were made in Georgia, and they had specifically a netting inside that would hold them up so that they would not fold over. People have asked why there was a tassel. Haven't found out that answer yet. But this was how the uniforms, the regalia that they had, that's how the group, the leadership in Georgia made a lot of their money, because they charged quite a bit for these. Okay. All right. Do we have some questions? Yes.
I was gonna say, you were talking about Faribault.
Yes.
My mom grew up on a farm in Faribault. Well, it wasn't that then, but it was 60 west going out of Faribault.
Okay.
Going west, it lived up on a farm. And I think it was about 1925. It was upstairs in her bedroom, looking out the window. It was dark, and all of a sudden saw Ku Klux Klan come through. And they had a circle driveway so you could enter it from two sides. And she said she was just absolutely, and they were Catholic, she was absolutely petrified. And they brought a cross in and they burned it in their farmyards. And I told her, I said, it could have been some of your neighbors for all you know.
Did you say that was Highway 60 to
Going
the
west.
east, going west?
It was up on their farm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try to repeat some of the questions for the group upstairs too. That was, I'm not sure what it is. Okay. Do we have some other comments or questions?
If I'm remembering right, because I read the Fever in the Heartland, the Klan there was hugely organized and involved in local and state politics. Was there anything, did they not get far enough to integrate into the political situation, that they really were affecting legislation and,
Right.
local
Right.
rules and so on and so forth in Minnesota.
Okay, locally, I've not found anything that shows that they were that they took over that much power in this area. In the Twin Cities, well, there were people at the state level who were Klan members who ran for governor, some who ran for legislative positions.
Did they have any chances? I mean,
The governor did not. He was outed pretty soon. Yeah, no. But you're right. In Indiana and Ohio had the highest per capita membership of all the states for Klan membership at this time, more than any of the Deep South. They were, for some reason, it just really took there then, and they went to leadership positions. Yes.
From your research, do you think that the Klan has truly disappeared, gone underground, changed its identity?
Okay. I defer to the Southern Poverty Law Center. The question is, has the Klan gone underground? Okay. Southern Poverty Law Center, if you haven't been on their website, that's a great place to they keep track of hate groups throughout the country. As of about 10 years ago, they stopped listing the Klan as an active group in Minnesota. But now it's changed to other groups. The Mothers for Liberty, whatever that one's called, the Proud Boys. So there are different hate groups. One thing that happened after World War II was that the government started to go after the Klan organizations for taxes. Okay, and so at that point, what had been a really cohesive national group broke into a lot of smaller sections. So then it's harder to keep track of exactly all of who was involved. But according to the Law Center, they're not here. They're not in Minnesota. But I think they've morphed into other organizations. And again, that's, I don't know what's all going on out there too. Yeah. I'm very hesitant to type in Ku Klux Klan. Although I find my name on that sometimes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, or how many of you knew about the Klan in Northfield before? Oh, so several, yeah.
I have, from about Hinckley, Minnesota, about 12 years ago.
Uh-huh.
My sister lives on a farm up close to Hinckley,
Okay.
and she was turning on to the entrance ramp into Hinckley, and there was a big sign on the road, and it said the KKK's coming to Hinckley. And, my sister took a picture of it too, so I saw it.
Wow.
She said she called in the city council, and she said the sign was gone about 2 days later. That's all I know about it.
You said how long ago was that?
What?
About how long ago was that?
About 10 or 12 years.
Okay. I've always been a little curious about Hinckley because my father was born there, and we would go up every year for his class reunions and different things, and they have the corn and clover carnival, all K's. And I just want to know about it. So, yeah. I don't know. You'd think just politically they'd be changing that. So, okay. Well, thank you. Yes.
Terrorist activity by the Klan in, let's say, southern Minnesota, well, any of Minnesota, besides any
Right.
few instances, but how much of the terrorism is active?
Okay. The question is if there has been terrorism documented in southern Minnesota. There were threats. There have been the intimidation of the cross burning. The closest I've heard, and it was close, was a family down to the south and east of Blooming Prairie, a Catholic family. They heard horses outside one night, and they went out, and there were Klan members on horses. And they said that they were going to burn down the house where the family was in. And the family had, I think they had like 4 sons, and all 4 sons then came out on the porch with rifles and threatened to shoot them. So it was kind of an impasse, but so there were threats. Thankfully, that didn't go through. There were no shots fired and no fire started. So, but that's
Burning here.
yes, absolutely, yeah. Definitely. Okay, well, I'm gonna leave the things up here. I shouldn't have to say this. No one gets to put that hood on, okay? I showed it to a family once, and the mother put it on, and I'm like, take that off right away. And afterwards, she told me she had the most terrible feeling wearing it. So, okay, but you're welcome to look at it, okay? And the people upstairs, come on down. We can show you, and you can get questions from you also. Okay.
And one thing I want to add before we give a huge round of applause to Nancy is the Minnesota Historical Society has digitized the Northfield News up until 1925, the year that the conclave was held on Bridge Square. So you can go online, you can go to the reference desk, and we're happy to help you, and you can read those articles yourself. It's on the front page of the Northfield News. We're happy to help you access them. Let's give Nancy a huge round of applause.